Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for watching. Tonight, a high-profile terrorism trial has been moved to Windsor. Plus, a big win for Otto. We'll break down Canada and Mexico's victory in a dispute with the states. Caldwell First Nation is looking to form a partnership with Parks Canada. They want to manage Windsor's future Ojibwe National Park. And did you get stranded over the holidays because of flight cancellations and delays? We'll tell you about the hearings looking into what went wrong and what can be done next. Tonight, we begin with the trial for a man accused of killing a Muslim family in London. It's confirmed that it will take place here in Windsor. Nathaniel Veltman is facing murder and terrorism charges. Police have said he targeted the family because of their Muslim faith. Family members who were killed were between the ages of 15 to 74. The CBC's Jason Vio joins us live now. Jason, what more can you tell us about the case and about the move to Windsor?
Well, the trial for 22-year-old Nathaniel Veltman will happen here at Windsor's Superior Court of Justice in September. And it's unclear exactly why the trial moved jurisdictions, but generally when these things happen, is to help ensure the accused has access to a fair trial. Now, it was a year and a half ago when this all occurred and the family died while they were out on an evening stroll. Police say the accused intentionally drove his truck into the family as they waited to cross the road. On June 6, 2021, 4 members of the Afzal family were killed along this road. A couple, ages 44 and 46, their 15-year-old daughter and her 74-year-old grandmother died. The couple's 9-year-old son survived but was seriously hurt. Police say the accused, Nathaniel Veltman, was driving a black truck and drove off the road into the family. Investigators say he did that because of their Muslim faith. This tragic killing caused fear in the London Muslim community. That's because this marked the first mass killing in that city's history. So many in that community were emotionally affected by what happened here. That's one possible reason this University of Windsor law professor said the trial was moved to Windsor.
It may be because, the publicity is such that folks feel, accused people may feel as if they've been actually tried in the court of public opinion. The presumption of innocence and this right to a fair trial before an impartial tribunal is at the cornerstone of our criminal justice system.
Veltman was arrested 10 kilometers from the scene. He's facing 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and terrorism-related charges. Now, because the trial will take place 2 hours outside of London where this occurred, it may create some barriers for people who planned to attend. Now, I did reach out to courthouse officials here to ask what, if any, changes or accommodations are being made that will help facilitate such a big trial that's coming from outside of the region here. I did not hear back, but we do know again that it will start in September and the trial itself is expected to last 12 weeks.
Thanks for this, Jason. CBC's Jason Vio live tonight. Human Rights Watch has leveled some criticism at Canada. The New York-based group's annual report says more than 20 First Nations remain underwater advisories. It also says First Nations in general are not receiving adequate support to adapt to climate change. The focus of the report, though, was authoritarian governments. The CBC's Abiku Kadasan reports.
Authoritarianism is rising. Even in the countries that claim to be democracies, we have seen a frontal assault on human rights.
A sea of suffering. Human Rights Watch's latest report says that's one major consequence of unchecked authoritarian regimes. The NGO suggests a tougher global response to Vladimir Putin's annexation of Crimea in 2014 or his military intervention in Syria may have made the Russian president think twice about launching a wider scale invasion of Ukraine last year.
And so the really key lesson for us now is to say, the international community can no longer sit by and say we can take our time or we can look over certain situations.
It praises the international response to the war, but shines a light on Europe's double standards. While EU countries have taken in about 4 million Ukrainian refugees, they have not been as welcoming to others, including Syrians, Palestinians, Afghans, and Somalis. The NGO also hails people standing up for their rights in the face of brutal state violence.
It's about individuals as well around the world who are moving and standing up. whether it's in Iran, in Afghanistan, in Myanmar. They're saying we're no longer willing to accept this and we'll actually risk everything.
The watchdog says China has long sought silence on its human rights record in exchange for foreign investment, but that silence is becoming more difficult to buy.
But I think what we have seen at the international level is actually this growing coalition of governments that are now willing to speak up about the lack of accountability for abuses in Xinjiang.
The NGO also accuses some world leaders of trading human rights for short-term political gains. U.S. President Joe Biden pledged to make Saudi Arabia a pariah state, but was criticized for greeting the country's crown prince with a fist bump. Canada doesn't escape scrutiny. The report questions how one of the world's most water-rich countries is unable to provide clean and safe drinking water for its indigenous communities, even years after the government promised to end advisories. Abby Kualasan, CBC News, London.
To better protect and oversee lands here in Windsor, Caldwell First Nation is looking to partner with the federal government. The First Nation wants to co-manage the future Ojibwe National Urban Park. The proposed park would include Windsor's Ojibwe Prairie Complex and Ojibwe Shores. Caldwell members met with Parks Canada officials yesterday and held a ceremony to honor the land. They say they are working on a partnership agreement.
We see erosion on the shorelines, and we see pollution in the water, and this is an opportunity right now in 2023 to address it, correct it, and walk lockstep with the people that have the same vision that we do.
Parks Canada declined in interview, saying it wanted to amplify Caldwell's voice. On top of this partnership, Caldwell is also developing its reserve land in Leamington. The First Nation got reserve status 2 years ago after a 230-year fight. This photo is a rendering of their marina and boardwalk, and they're also building 28 housing units, which are those gray structures by the water. They will start getting built in the fall. A gas station and variety store will also open on the land in March.
There will be a place here if you want to come home. And we understand some people don't, and some people never do on First Nations. So we know that that'll happen, but they need to know, and I'm sure hopefully they feel that this is a place where they can come and you know, be with Caldwell First Nation, because we are dispersed, and we were dispersed because of colonization.
Companies that built homes in Windsor, Essex are getting a break on costs, but that break will cost taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars. Ontario's Bill 23 eliminates, reduces, and freezes certain fees paid to cities and towns. Those are called development charges. This new bill applies to affordable housing builds and non-profit housing. It also applies to affordable housing in new developments. The provincial government says this bill is going to create more affordable housing across Ontario. The bill sets the affordable housing price at 80% of the average market value. That's $500,000 here in Windsor. These fees, they're used by local government to build roads, sewers, and community centers in new neighborhoods. Let's look at LaSalle as an example. This change will cost the town more than $500,000. The mayor says the average tax bill will go up by $37 to cover the losses. Tecumseh, still doing the math. The typical development charge for a single-family home is $24,000.
The whole idea of the development charge piece was that growth will pay for growth. And that is now in a bit of a jeopardy, only because we're going to have to find more creative ways in terms of you know, making sure that all of those services that our citizens have come to accept and deserve could be, you know, could be retracted, or their taxes will go up to make up the difference.
To the United States now, where the Justice Department has appointed a special counsel to investigate Joe Biden's handling of classified documents. The announcement comes after papers marked classified were found at Biden's home in Delaware and at an office in Washington.
This appointment underscores for the public the department's commitment to both independence and accountability in particularly sensitive matters, and to making decisions indisputably guided only by the facts and the law.
Robert Hur, the former Trump-appointed U.S. Attorney for Maryland, has been named to lead the inquiry. Biden says he's cooperating fully with the review. Top secret documents were also found at former President Donald Trump's residence. Another special counsel is investigating that case in which the FBI went to Mar-a-Lago with a search warrant to retrieve those papers. Canada's auto sector is celebrating one of the big stories that emerged from this week's North American Leader Summit in Mexico. An arbitration panel has ruled in favor of Canada and Mexico in a trade dispute with the United States. It's all about car parts and where they're made. Alex Panetta joins us from our Washington bureau. Alex, we've got a lot of auto part makers here in Windsor, so break it down for us. What is this ruling all about?
Well, it's important for Windsor, and it's also arguably the most important element in the new NAFTA, cars, and the struggle to attract manufacturing jobs for them. The new NAFTA, USMCA, CUSMA, whatever you want to call it, sets stricter rules. If you want to avoid car tariffs, well, 3/4 of your car has to come from here in North America. This particular dispute was about how to calculate that. So now let's go back a couple of years. The deal has already been signed. In fact, it's already been in effect for a few weeks. And the United States suddenly stuns everybody by insisting on an unusually strict formula to calculate this. Let's break it down. Using my phone here as an example, let's say this is an auto part. Let's say 80% of this contains components from North America. 80%. That's great. This piece avoids a tariff. But then you have to do a second calculation, a bigger calculation for the entire car. Canada, Mexico, and the auto industry figure, okay, well, this little part here, that's deemed North American, so 100% of it should count towards the car's North Americanness. The U.S. said, no, I don't think so. The United States said this piece is only 80% North American, so only 80% of it counts. Now, Mexico was flabbergasted. It sued. Canada joined the suit, and car companies cheered them on. They called this formula absurdly complicated, profit-killing, damaging to the continent's car industry, and not what countries agreed to in the first place. In this case, Canada submitted as evidence an email from the United States a couple of years ago showing that all three countries had agreed on a simpler formula. And the international panel agreed. The United States broke this trade deal, and it has lost this case.
So what is the impact then of this deal for the auto industry, and what are the implications for the new NAFTA?
Well, so the winners here officially are Canada and Mexico, but really it's the car companies. They get cheaper access to more parts that are less expensive. And potentially the general public wins, and consumers who win potentially cheaper cars. The losers, maybe, regions that have a lot of auto workers. I hate to break it to you, Windsor, but you know, the United States argued that the rules Canada and Mexico fought for could mean a drop of 8 to 30% roughly in North American content per car. So some groups blasted Canada for joining this case, saying, why are you getting involved in helping keep North American content out of North America or out of North American cars? But the car companies say it's a lot more complicated than that. They say if the regulations become too onerous and too expensive, they just shift production completely overseas to another continent and just pay the tariff, which in Canada on a car is 2.5%. So that's an important economic dispute. What's also important is how the United States responds to this decision, because this is really an important test, a big test of how the new NAFTA's dispute system will work. And finally, just one other point I wanted to raise is the Canadian submission includes a suspicion, an allegation that perhaps the United States, in introducing this intended rule, was not just acting altruistically and trying to get more North American content in cars, but was trying to make trade more complicated. And this Canadian submission suggested that perhaps they were doing that in the hope of making car manufacturers produce within the largest market so that you wouldn't have to trade as much. And it just so happens that largest market is the United States. So basically, the U.S. was accused of being sneaky and belatedly trying to change the terms of the deal. In any case, the U.S. lost, and now we're going to be watching to see how the Americans respond. They've been non-committal so far.
Thank you so much for breaking that down for us, Alex.
Thank you.
Alex Panetta in Washington. A live look outside there. It is wet outside, and we did promise you rain for this evening, though that special weather statement has been lifted for that heavy rainfall. But rain is still in the forecast for the rest of this evening. Colette Kennedy will be here right after the break, and she'll have more for you. Stay with us. Several airlines apologized today for what they called unacceptable service over the holiday season. Officials from Air Canada, Sunwing, and WestJet testified at committee that was called during the parliamentary break.
Canadians understand that bad weather may disrupt air travel. However, they expect and deserve to be kept informed about alternative plans and be compensated when their rights are violated. Unfortunately, the circumstances many travelers faced this holiday season were completely unacceptable.
Transport Minister Omar Al-Gabra said reforms are being planned to help make sure passengers who deserve refunds get them. Airline executives admitted they should have done better. They also said that communication with customers was lacking. Over the holiday, WestJet canceled 1,600 flights, Sunwing 67. There's still time to catch a rare glimpse of the Vincent van Gogh exhibit in Detroit. Turns out that it is so rare, the owner of one of the paintings didn't even know that one of the paintings was on display. Some of Van Gogh's most celebrated pieces are at the Detroit Institute of Arts right now. They're on display for another couple of weeks. But one painting is now part of a lawsuit. That's this piece right here, known as The Novel Reader or The Reading Lady. The owner bought it for $3.7 million in 2017, but a third party took possession of the art. That's according to a lawsuit filed by the owner. It's this exhibition in Detroit that alerted the owner where the painting was. The museum says there's no allegation of misconduct, but would not comment further. The case goes to court next week. A zoo in England is celebrating the birth of the world's rarest chimpanzee. The young male is a Western chimp, which is a critically endangered subspecies native to Western Africa. The chimp, who has been bonding with his mother since his birth last month, is seen as a small but vital boost to the world's population of Western chimpanzees. Their ranks have decreased by 80% in the last 25 years. This furry fella hasn't been named yet, but the zoo has named other baby chimps after famous musicians, so you may just be looking at the next Harry Styles. Let's bring in Colette Kennedy now for a look at our weather forecast, though I think we're both still charmed by those images of the very delightful chimp there.
Yes, I love those images. Those are awesome. And they're certainly better than some of the images we're going to be having here with what's going on with the weather pattern. Now, it's not so bad for southwestern Ontario, really isn't. The storm, the track moved a little bit further south, a little further east. So still some of the areas that were anticipated getting hit hard, like eastern Ontario, that's still going to happen. But some of the rainfall amounts backing off even for what we were going to be seeing from Chatham-Kent over towards Windsor. It doesn't mean we don't have it in there, but you'll see what I mean as we go through the boards here. So temperatures, they may be above freezing, but we will be seeing that colder air filtering in. So through the overnight, that's 9 o'clock, they're down to 2, and then through the overnight to tomorrow morning, we're definitely into the negatives with strong winds. Then we have a wind chill factor, so it's going to be a cool start to the day tomorrow. And speaking of those winds out of the north, they've been picking up a little bit, and we'll carry on seeing those gusting 50 to 60 kilometers an hour tonight into tomorrow morning. It means even a little bit of flurry, a little wet snow blowing around, so it can make it a bit tricky, reducing the visibility. And not only that, fog has been an issue too. I'll show you those advisories in a moment, but you see here where some of the heaviest rain is out over the lake and then kind of headed over towards Norfolk County. And so maybe St. Thomas sort of getting tagged through there, but it's lighter amounts. There's a little batch coming through Chatham-Kent, just to the north through there, where you'll pick up a bit heavier rain, but it just kind of moves on through and then tracks further east so that it doesn't amount to much. Cold air starting to filter in, changing that over to some wet snow. But again, that's pretty much to the north and east of southwestern Ontario. Some of those fog advisories here, certainly going to be some nasty conditions as things change over to more snow and less rain. And so the turquoise in there, winter weather travel advisories. And if you will be traveling into eastern Ontario, I don't actually advise it, but if you have to in the next 24 hours, winter storm warnings there, snowfall warnings as well. And we're talking about amounts in that area of 20 to 30 centimeters of snow, probably 10 to even 15 moving through the Niagara region, and just trace to a centimeter or two as we get back here towards the west end of Lake Erie. So not as much to contend with. Now, it's going to get colder this weekend, but high pressure building in means we're getting sunshine coming back at us too. So it's been a while, right? It's going to feel good to get that sun coming on back. Some of the rainfall you can see is negligible through here. Snowfall amounts for our area anyway, negligible as well. And so as we push forward and look at your 5-day forecast, there you get that sun coming back. A cool start though on Saturday morning. Plus remember, factoring in the winds tomorrow morning, it's going to be a chilly start there too.
Thanks for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
When we come back, a story of treasure. Stay with us.
free.
There have been plenty of tales told about buried treasure, with the actual treasure very hard to find. But just recently in Vancouver, the opposite happened. The treasure was unearthed, but the tale behind it remains a mystery. The CBC's Karen Larson has the story.
This never happens.
They were looking for old bottles. Instead, they found this.
This is the mother lode of silverware.
I thought we were going to have to fight over who got the first piece of cutlery, and then I kept finding more and more and more.
A hot tip about an abandoned car led the pair to the secret location. In no time, they hit a so-called hot pocket, pulling 121 intact pieces of silverware out of the dirt. Spoons, knives, forks, even pickle forks, all with an old Hotel Vancouver insignia.
It's pretty amazing to actually have found this without any map or anything to the person that originally put this stuff there.
With a little research, they discovered the silverware could date back as far as 1939, when the Grand Railway Hotel first opened at the corner of Burrard and Georgia.
The logo, which on the spoon says Hotel Vancouver, is a mimic of the Canadian national logo of the time.
Many of the pieces are in surprisingly good condition, considering they were buried in a rainforest for who knows how many decades. The pair won't divulge the exact location of the stash, only to say it was somewhere near the UBC lands. How it got there is anyone's guess.
We've basically come down to two conclusions. It was either put there purposely for somebody to find in the future, as we did, or it was somebody that stole it and stashed it for a rainy day, and then something happened to that person or they forgot about it.
Since posting their find on social media, collectors have been reaching out, wanting to buy pieces.
So the ones that have cleaned up really good still hold a really good market value to collectors. We've already decided we're both going to keep one set for ourselves. We're offering one set to the hotel for their archives.
The find won't make them rich, but they sure have a good story to tell now about the history and mystery of treasure found buried in a Vancouver woods. Karen Larson, CBC News, Vancouver.
So if you're in need of some cutlery, you should give digging in the woods a try. That is it for CBC Windsor News. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/Windsor, and you can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks for watching. Good night.